We begin with these words. They are a Thanksgiving address adapted from a version by the Haudenosaunee peoples mentioned in Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. Greetings and thanks to each other as people. To the earth, mother of all, greetings and thanks. To all the waters, waterfalls and rain, rivers and oceans, greetings and thanks. To all the fish life, greetings and thanks. The grains and greens, beans and berries, as one we send thanks to food plants. Medicine herbs of the world and their keepers, greetings and thanks. To all animals and their teachings, greetings and thanks. The trees for shelter and shade, fruit and beauty, greetings and thanks. And from the four directions, the four winds, thank you for purifying the air we breathe and giving us strength, greetings and thanks. The thunderers, our grandfathers in the sky, we hear your voices, greetings and thanks. And now, the sun for the light of a new day and all the fires of life, greetings and thanks. To our oldest grandmother, the moon, leader of women all over the world, and the stars for their mystery, beauty, and guidance, greetings and thanks. To our teachers from all times, reminding us how to live in harmony, greetings and thanks. And for all the gifts of creation, for all the love around us, greetings and thanks. And for that which is forgotten, we remember. We end our words. Now our minds are one.
So as we mentioned earlier, tomorrow is Earth Day. As I think about my own relationship to the earth, to the natural world, to the interdependent web of all existence, as I have been thinking about planning this service, working with our members of our Green Sanctuary team, I've been thinking about the ways that our culture, my culture, has taught me to feel separate from these things. Not all cultures teach this to their children. But we, in this society, we are deeply influenced by the white Western influences of history. And unlearning these lessons as adults can be complex and difficult. Our culture has been influenced heavily by the church, the Catholic Church, over centuries, beginning first with the Roman Empire. And this is not a commentary on the church today or people of particular faiths. This is a recognition that our laws, our beliefs, our philosophies have been deeply influenced by these ancient beliefs. Centuries of legal domination of the land and the indigenous peoples. If you have never heard of the doctrine of discovery, I highly encourage you to Google it and spend a little time this evening reading about the doctrine of discovery and the ways that this ancient papal edict changed the course of history and is continuing to change our society, particularly in that there are cases in courts, even today, that draw their legal precedence from the doctrine of discovery issued by a pope centuries ago. Now, the Catholic Church and people of many faiths and many cultures around our world are realizing the harm that we have caused. in the ways that this harm affects every single one of us on this planet, but it disproportionately affects communities that are already on the margins of privilege. Pollution harms us all, but the sources of pollution tend to be closest to communities of color, Black communities, Indigenous communities. Rates of pollution causing cancers, pollution-caused cancers, are higher in those communities. Large industrialized nations are by far and away the biggest polluters on our planet, and yet it is the smaller nations, particularly the island nations. And I think I was reminded this morning at our 9 a.m. service of our partner congregation in Banay in the Philippines, a small island in the ocean. And these people are being deeply impacted by climate change, even though they are not the primary people causing it. Our partner church is currently experiencing a massive drought and hunger because of climate change. And our congregation is supporting them financially, but we need to be a part of the larger climate solution. At 12:30 today, after this service, our Green Sanctuary team is showing a film in the Legacy Room right across from the hall about the Pope's recent encyclical, Laudato Si, about the climate crisis and the call to action to heal our planet. All are welcome to attend the viewing of that film, and there will be snacks provided. Now, science, of course, science is an important part of the solutions to the problems we have caused. Alternative energies, things like that. Initiatives like the Earthshot Prize, which I think is like Prince William's or something. Do you know what I'm talking about? You always see Prince William's face, and he talks about this huge, it's called the Earthshot Prize, and it's a huge prize to great, brilliant minds who are coming up with scientific solutions to the problems of climate crisis. But there is another important way to help us solve the mess that we are in. And it is a solution that already exists, and it's a solution that has existed for centuries. And this is the wisdom and scientific practices of indigenous peoples, which can show us how to live as a part of the interdependent web as opposed to apart from it. Now, colonizers, when they came to this country, they did not recognize these practices of the indigenous peoples as the highly developed scientific methods that they were. They didn't think that these people were farming because they didn't see the kinds of fields of rows of crops that they recognized from their home countries. But the indigenous people absolutely were farming. They were planting and growing and cultivating species. Corn didn't start out like that. Corn was a teeny tiny grass. It was cultivated. The three sisters of squash, beans, and corn growing together, the indigenous peoples knew that if they did this, it would reduce the pests, it would improve the growth, it would do so much for each of the plants. These were highly developed methods that the people who came to this country from Europe, first of all, didn't recognize, didn't ask, and didn't learn from. But they still exist, and we can learn from them. We can also pay attention to, and we can learn from the patterns of the earth, the weather. Like, it's trying to tell us something. The waters, the migrating animals. Have any of you ever taken a tour, the architecture tour of the Chicago River? Yeah. Some of the buildings that are on the edges of the Chicago River are facing toward, their windows and doors are facing toward the river because the river is beautiful and they want to see it. Some of them are facing away from the river. You know when that building was built if you know whether or not it's facing toward or away from the river. If it's facing away from the river, it's old. Why? Because back in the old days, you did not want to see that river. It was nasty. It was deeply, deeply polluted. It was a sewer. And so what did the people of Chicago do? They did not clean the river. They re-engineered the flow of the river. They re-engineered the flow of the river because they recognized that they were dumping into their own water supply. So they're like, that's not good. So they didn't think, hey, let's clean it up. They thought, let's change the entire direction of the flow of the river. This is a white Western approach to environmental crises. Eventually, people figured out that that wasn't the solution. And now the buildings facing toward the river are newer because the river is beautiful. But if we pay attention, the earth is telling us things. The Lakota people of the Western Plains refer to the earth as Unchamaki, which translates literally to grandmother earth. There is no word for earth aside from grandmother earth in their language. And as I said with the children, if every time we referred to the earth, we referred to it as grandmother. See how I said it? We referred to it as grandmother. We would not refer to the earth as it. And that would change our whole understanding, our whole relationship to the earth. Names, words have power. Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is a scientist and writer and a member of the Potawatomi tribe, wrote an incredible book that we've done as a collective read here at the fellowship called Braiding Sweetgrass. And she says of our culture of colonization that it is a culture of immigration. And by that she means that we have lost our connection to place. We live, she says, as if we are always getting ready to move. For the sake of the people in the land, she says, the urgent work of settler Americans now may be to set aside the ways of the colonist and to become indigenous to the place. Now, that does not mean that we will suddenly become members of native or indigenous tribes, but that we can act as if we live here for good. One way that we do that, she says, is to learn our neighbors' names. The fact that so many of us and our children can recognize and name many corporate logos or celebrity faces, but we cannot name plants or trees or animals. I know that's a fox, but I don't know what kind of fox. I don't know its name. That contributes to our sense of isolation and loneliness on this planet. It contributes to the sense that we as humans, we people who have names that we know, are more important than the ones whose names we don't know. Robin Wall Kimmerer says, quote, philosophers call this state of isolation and disconnection species loneliness, a deep, unnamed sadness that stems from estrangement from the rest of creation and from the loss of relationship. She says, as our human dominance of the world has grown, we have become more isolated, more lonely when we can no longer call out to our neighbors. And so the thing that I love about all of this, the hope that it gives me, because I know we can feel grief when we think about the crisis facing our earth, and we can feel hopelessness, and those feelings are valid, but we cannot stay there. The thing that gives me hope is a reminder that we don't have to do a ton of work, that we don't have to invent entirely new ways of being. We simply need to reconnect to our natural world. We are not apart from it. We are not far away from it. You don't have to go somewhere special to be in nature. That's another idea that our culture has imparted on us, like, we're going to go up north for the weekend and be in nature. Like, it's right there. Our own parking lot has a little pond that is just teeming with life. We can step outside, we can feel the grass on our toes, we can look up at the sky, we can notice the plants, we can learn their names, we can watch the animals. If we can connect with the indigenous people of this land, our connection will continue to grow because they have so much to teach us, because their culture taught them for centuries how to be a part of the web in a way that my culture did not. We can feel less isolated, more hopeful, and more connected to a world that gives us life. We can be willing to be a part of the solutions that improve life for all of us. And so I'll end this morning with a quote about gratitude from Kimmerer before we hear from members of our Green Sanctuary team. Cultures of gratitude must also be cultures of reciprocity, giving and receiving. Each person, human or no, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them. If an animal gives its life to feed me, I am in turn bound to support its life or the life of its relatives. If I receive a stream's gift of pure water, then I am responsible for returning that gift in kind. An integral part of a human's education, she says, is to know those duties and how to perform them. What does the earth ask of us? Kimmerer says, very little. The earth gives us so much, but asks only for gratitude and reciprocity. There is nothing we can give the earth except these things, despite the many gifts that she gives to us. Amen.